Hello, everyone, and welcome to a different video than normal. Today is less of a technical analysis and more of a discussion on the goalie events of the first round of the draft. Now, I've been seriously following goalie draft prospects for about the third year now. And every year, I was surprised by the first pick. In 2023, Chicago shocked everyone by taking Adam Guyon as the first goalie off the board. An early pick, but, not quite a first rounder, but still a surprise nonetheless. Now there was a lot of raw potential with Guyon, but I still had him at best as my sixth goalie at the time. So, not a great pick then, and especially now. Last year, my top goalie was Carter George, and I felt confident he would have been taken first, but Colorado shocked me and took Ilya Nabokov. Now, I had no read on where Nabokov would go, but as my number two, I really liked the pick for them. This year, I thought, wow, consensus number one goalie, 6'5", super athletic, ranked in the first round by nearly everyone. Joshua Ravensbergen had to go in the first round as the top goalie. Now, there were four teams on my list for potential JR landing spots in the first round: Columbus at 20, Philly at 22 or 31, Nashville at 26, and Winnipeg at 28. I actually did have a strong feeling that JR would go to Columbus, especially seeing as they moved on from Tarasov. But of course, they wanted to take me for a spin. Now, listen, Pyotr Andreyanov is wicked. One of the best goalies in the draft for sure. But this pick just, doesn't make a ton of sense to me. If JR had been taken, I would have thought it was a bit high, but ultimately would have been fine with it because they got the best goalie in the class with incredible potential who would have gone in the first round regardless. After all, there are small reaches in the first round every year to get their guy. Now, I have Petr Andreyanov as my fourth goalie, but I can fully understand him being like second or third. But at the same time, the separation between him and someone you can get in like the late second or maybe even early third probably isn't actually that big. So, the first problem is that there were better guys on the table, including one that I think is significantly better. The second and very broad problem is his fit. Now, CBJ is a good young team. I'd expect them to contend for the playoffs next year, and in maybe 3 to 4 years could be a legit dangerous team, especially given expected development of their top guys. Now, Andreyanov allegedly has a contract with CSK Moscow for at least 5 years. Plus, I'd say probably 95% of goalies need at least one half year in the AHL, and you're probably looking at more of a full season, even if they're coming from high level pro before they can jump to the NHL. So, even though the AHL could technically be considered worse than a few different leagues, it's the most similar hockey to the NHL stylistically for goalie, and European or college goalies just they do need that AHL experience, just maybe outside of a few exceptions. So overall, we're looking at least 5 to 6 years before Andreanov's ready for the NHL, and that's just to make the NHL. Shesterkin and Sorokin were both drafted in 2014, and it wasn't until their seventh year after being drafted that they were actually making a serious impact in the NHL. And it wasn't until year 8 for Sorokin where he was a full on starter. In 7 years, we don't know what the Jackets will look like. But I know that Wrensky will no longer be what he is today, and that alone could hurt their chances of being serious contenders as they won't have that top tier number one defenseman anymore. And who knows if Denton Mateychuk will become that. So with the 20th pick in 2014, guys like Nick Schmaltz, Jared McCann, and Adrian Kempe were all available. Not to mention David Pasternak, of course, but he's more of a unicorn. So obviously there were guys that completely didn't work out, but those three are very solid top six forwards who were making the NHL an NHL impact 3 years after being drafted and were very solidified as good or great contributors at 5 years. Not only could they directly assist in contention early on, they indirectly help out a lot as they will be young and cheap for a few years. So at Columbus's 20th pick, you could get a lot of value. And it seems like it would have made more sense for them to draft a skater with that 20th pick. Now, I know the class is this year is weaker, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know the prospects that are skaters, but from my knowledge in the scouting community, there were still some very good pieces left on the board. So to me, it just doesn't seem like a smart move overall for to pick Andreyanov. Jack Gray should be their goalie of the immediate future, but I also really like Evan Gardner. And honestly, I don't even know if Andreyanov is that much better than him. If they had a combined draft class, I probably they would be right next to each other, and the separation just it wouldn't be all that much. So Andrianov, he just doesn't really fit the timeline to me. It could be 6 years at the earliest before he's in the NHL, but even 8 before he's ready to start and actually be very good. They could have used a different skater, but even if they weren't necessarily to work out for their, specific plan, a skater prospect just holds a lot more value and is easier to trade than goalie prospects because, well, there's more uncertainty in goalies. And also, they may not fit the team you want to trade them to because, well, they might already have their guys and they might not be interested in taking a goalie. So that you're kind of already just washing out a few teams that actually might have the pieces that you really want that otherwise you could get with a skater prospect. Now, Josh Ravensbergen is also probably going to take 5 years, but he has the potential to be a franchise goalie. Does he get there? I'm not completely sure, but he does have legit Vezina potential, and it's quite possible that something really clicks for him in his development, and his development is actually accelerated quite a bit. But even though both might take longer, the key difference is that the teams will have more control over JR. Coaches could work with him very early on, and he could be in the pro system, acclimating to the NHL style pretty soon. While the KHL is better than the AHL, I'm never going to debate that. It's just not as projectable a league for goalies as you'd think. And with Andreyanov over there for so long, CVJ would just kind of have to leave him to his own devices. They won't have any control over his development there. Ravensbergen really could alter a franchise, and I just don't think Andreyanov is quite that, even with how good he is. The risk reward makes a lot more sense to me for JR in this situation, but I don't really see it with Andreyanov being picked that high. Now, as for San Jose taking JR at 30, it was a little less shocking than CBJ, but man, I did not expect that at all. San Jose was not on the list for teams to pick JR in the first round for me. And value wise, it's a really good pick. That 26 to 32 range is where I thought he ideally should go. And San Jose pulled the trigger, probably flabbergasted that he actually made it to them. Now, I know the fit seems odd given that they have Yaroslav Askarov, an already young franchise altering goalie, but you have to realize they have literally no one else in the pipeline. This was a team that really needed to make a top 3 rounds goalie pick to supplement the system, and honestly, probably another fifth or sixth round depth guy. So they can fill out with a high end guy and just have someone else in the back. Now, I probably would have waited for their 53rd pick in the second round to get a goalie, but there's a chance that the really good guys like maybe Medvedev or Ivan Kovic probably aren't there. So if they want, I get that biting early on Ravensbergen, it makes a lot of sense to get their guy. And overall, I just really like it for the Sharks for a couple reasons. I've referred to as Ravensbergen as Askarov light, and that's literally because he is just straight up. If they kept the goalie coach for Askarov around, and he would be able to work closely with JR with a ton of experience on the type of goalie he is and be able to develop him effectively. So that's a big positive in my eyes. San Jose also just has had a ton of picks and still have more close seconds. So pick wise, they can afford to go in early on a high end goalie and won't miss out on too much value if they took a skater. I'd say San Jose's real window probably starts in 5 years. And given how all of their core are young, they don't really have that time limit because everyone should be developing at the same time. And that's very different, like Columbus, where Wierenski is probably not close to the same player at all, like in 5 years, just naturally. There are also a few situations that can happen here. One, Askarov turns out to be sick, but by the time JR is ready to take over, Askarov is either making or looking to make insane amounts of money. So to cut costs, they move to JR. Two, both turn out to be good, and they get to choose who's better after valuable time as a tandem. Three, Askarov doesn't turn out, Ravensberger does. They still get their elite goalie. Four, Askarov turns out, Ravensbergen is a backup. Maybe that's still reaching the first round, but by no means a terrible pick. Five, Askarov turns out, they want to keep him. Ravensbergen also turns out, they get to trade him for a haul because that's a potential young, really good starting goalie, so teams will want that. Now, as like the ultimate goalie fan, I'm so pumped guys are getting valued more and they're getting picked high. But also, I have to try to be objective. I really like Andreyanov as a goalie. I can't stress that enough. And I would love to see him work out. But I also think that he just was picked too high. And there were several other better options, in my opinion. As for Ravensbergen, I think he fits great in San Jose. And I'm glad I was, at least right in him going in the first round. Please do let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Columbus was smart in taking a goalie at 20? Do you think Andreyanov was the right pick? And what about Ravensbergen getting picked? Do you think it was a smart move by San Jose, or should they have put more trust in Askarov? Let me know.